Top 10 Richest Celebrities in the World 2021. Number 10, J.K. Rowling. Net worth, $1 billion. The first of 10 celebrity billionaires, J.K. Rowling is obviously most famous for creating the Harry Potter empire, which has sold more than 500 million books worldwide and generated billions at the global box office. Rowling is one of the wealthiest private citizens in the United Kingdom and the first author in the world to achieve a net worth of $1 billion. It should be noted that J.K. is extremely private about her personal finances and has denied being a billionaire. That might be possible if she has secretly donated a large portion of her wealth to charities. For the record, it is known that she has donated at least $150 million to charity to date. She wrote the first book as an unemployed single mother living on welfare. Number 9, David Copperfield. Net worth, $1 billion. David is by far the richest magician on the planet. He earns $60 million per year thanks largely to the 500-plus shows he performs each year at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. After Las Vegas shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, David did not lay off any staff and continued to personally pay every salary. David owns the world's largest collection of magic memorabilia. The collection contains more than 150,000 items, with especially valuable relics from Harry Houdini, George Ismailis, and the father of modern magic, Robert Houdin. The collection is housed in a 40,000 square foot warehouse located several miles off the Las Vegas Strip. Some experts have valued the collection at a mind-boggling $500 million. David's real estate portfolio is worth $300 million. The crown jewel of his portfolio is an 11-island resort in the Bahamas that costs $100 per night to rent with a 4-night minimum. He bought his first Bahamian island in 2006 for $55 million. In Vegas, he owns an $18 million mansion. In New York City, he owns a 4-floor apartment that is worth at least $60 million. Number 8, Paul McCartney. Net worth, $1.2 billion. It goes without saying that Sir Paul McCartney is one of the most successful and significant musicians in history. The Beatles are the best-selling music act of all time. As of this writing, they have sold 600 million records worldwide. Paul is no slouch as a solo artist and still regularly performs sold-out tours around the world. In a given year, he earns $70 million from his empire, with a large portion of those earnings coming from royalties generated by his own songs and copyrights to thousands of other songs by artists. As most people know, Paul and John Lennon sold the publishing rights to most of their songs decades ago in what has been proven to be a terrible mistake. Michael Jackson bought the catalog in 1985 for $47.5 million. A decade later, Jackson merged all songs with Sony Music to form a new company called Sony, a TV music publishing. In 2016, Sony paid $750 million to acquire Jackson's 50% stake to become sole owners. Soon after the transaction, McCartney sued Sony to reclaim any songs written prior to 1978. He cited a U.S. copyright law that allows an author to reclaim the U.S. rights to their work after 56 years. Sony and Paul eventually reached a confidential settlement. McCartney do not own publishing rights to the majority of Beatles songs, but that doesn't mean they don't get paid from their usage. They both get songwriters' royalties, which in the United States average 33.33% of all revenue generated. Outside the US, they earn a shared 50%. McCartney owns just 2 Beatles songs outright, Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You. Those 2 songs were written under a very early publishing deal and were therefore not included in the Michael Jackson sale. Number 7, Jay-Z. Net worth, $1.3 billion. Jumping a couple positions in $100 million compared to 2020. Jay-Z clocks in at the 7th richest celebrity in the world with a net worth of $1.3 billion. Like many of the celebrities on this list, Jay earned the vast majority of his personal fortune outside of his primary entertainment talent. Jay oversees an extremely impressive business empire, an empire that's made some very interesting movies. 2021. In February 2021, he sold 50% of his champagne brand Armand de Brignac to luxury conglomerate LVMH at a $640 million valuation. A week later, he struck a deal to sell streaming service Tidal to Jack Dorsey's other company, Square, for $300 million. Jay also owns equity stakes in SpaceX, Outlier, Uber, Sweetgreen, and Ethos. When combined with wife Beyonce's $500 million fortune, the couple's net worth is within striking distance of $2 billion. Beyonce and Jay-Z own $100 million worth of art and $150 million in global real estate. The crown jewel of their property portfolio is a 30,000 square foot mansion in Bel Air, which was picked up for $88 million in 2017. They put $36 million down and took out a $52 million mortgage. Jay-Z's net worth is $1.3 billion. Number 6, Kim Kardashian. Net worth, $1.4 billion. Once again, we differ slightly from Forbes, which very recently estimated the soon-to-be former Mrs. Kanye West as being worth a flat $1 billion. We estimate the actual amount to be a bit higher. Despite our differences, there's one thing we can agree on. Kim Kardashian is unfathomably successful considering her career started with a stint as Paris Hilton's personal assistant and a sex tape with Richest. She parlayed that early infamy into a reality show that ends a 20-season run this year after debuting in 2007. Kim then parlayed reality fame into a social media and product empire. Today, Kim's two most valuable assets are KKW Beauty, a direct-to-consumer beauty product line, and Skims, a shapewear company. KKW Beauty generates north of $100 million per year in revenue. Last year, she sold a 20% stake in KKW to Coty, the same company that bought 51% of half-sister Kylie Jenner's Kylie Cosmetics company in 2020. KKW Beauty was most recently valued at $700 million. Kim owns 72% of the company, giving her a pre-tax $500 million stake. Skims was launched in 2019. An April 2021 New York Times article reported that Skims had recently raised $154 million at a $1.6 billion valuation. Kim is believed to own 50–60% of the brand, giving her a pre-tax stake worth $800, $960 million. Number 5, Jami Gertz. Net worth, $3 billion. Children of the 1980s know Jami Gertz thanks to roles in movies like The Lost Boys and Less Than Zero, and the television show Square Pegs. More recently, Jami has had co-starring roles in sitcoms like Still Standing and The Neighbors. So how is Jami Gertz a multi-billionaire? The literal 5th richest celebrity on the planet. She married very, very well. In 1989, Jami married an upstart financier named Anthony Ressler. After graduating from Georgetown University, Tony went to work at Michael Milken's now infamous investment bank Drexel Burnham Lambert. Drexel pioneered the art of raising gobs of money for corporate raiders who would go out and buy companies with nothing down and lots of debt. After Drexel's implosion, in 1990 Tony co-founded Apollo Global Management. He and Jami married the year before. In 1997 Tony co-founded Ares Management. Today the company manages more than $130 billion in assets. In 2015 Jami and Tony bought a majority stake in the NBI's Atlanta Hawks for an estimated $800 million. Today the Hawks are worth $1.5 billion. They originally wanted to buy the Dodgers, but were outbid. They own a minority stake in the Milwaukee Brewers and around $100 million worth of known real estate, including a property in the ultra-exclusive gated community of Beverly Park. That is worth at least $50 million. Their home in Malibu sits above Broad Beach, which is considered one of the most desirable places to live in the Boo. Number 4, Oprah Winfrey. Net worth, $3.5 billion. The entertainment world was stunned in 1984 when a little-known black news anchor, with an unusual first name, was given a 4-year, $1 million contract to host her own morning talk show in Chicago. Within a few months of debuting, the show rocketed from dead last to number 1 in the Chicago market. Within 2 years, the show was nationally syndicated. But Oprah was unhappy. She quickly realized her 4-year, $1 million contract was peanuts compared to the profits that were being generated from her work. Oprah consulted with Chicago media legend Roger Ebert. Roger told her to meet with his agent, Jeffrey Jacobs. Jacobs explained that Siskel and Ebert owned a piece of their show's back-end equity. That's how you get rich. You need to be an owner. Oprah took Jeffrey's advice to the extreme. Actually, she also took Jeffrey. Oprah and Jeffrey co-founded Harpo Productions and proceeded to produce the Oprah Winfrey Show on their own dime. They then sold the show market by market. Next, Oprah and Jeffrey negotiated a much larger overall deal with IBC that included movie productions, a magazine, books, and, most importantly, the right to launch other TV shows under her production umbrella. All production for these shows would take place at her 3.5-acre Harpo campus. Number 3, Kanye West. Net worth, $6.6 billion. Forbes says $1.6 billion. We say $6.6 billion. Why the difference? I frankly don't know why Forbes is so quick to bestow billionaire status on some celebrities based on extremely loose unconfirmed data, but won't throw Kanye a bone. Here's what we know, and this info has been confirmed by 2 banks. Nike's Jordan brand generates $3–4 billion per year in sales, earning Michael Jordan $100–120 million per year in royalties. Nike owns the Jordan brand. If Nike were to sell Jordan, at a 10x valuation it would fetch $30–40 billion. That money would go to Nike. Kanye has almost exactly the same royalty deal with Yeezy. The major difference is that Kanye owns the brand. So if a sale were to ever happen, Kanye would be the sole beneficiary. Number 2, Steven Spielberg. Net worth, $7.5 billion. What's the difference between James Cameron being worth $700 million and Steven Spielberg being worth $7.5 billion? Well, for one, Cameron-produced movies have generated $6.3 billion at the worldwide box office, whereas Spielberg-produced movies have generated more than $14 billion. And just like James, Steven has traded salary for points on a number of his box office smashes. For example, Spielberg earned $250 million off 1993's Jurassic Park, followed by $150 million from the sequel, and $75 million from the third installment, for a total of $475 million from this one franchise. But the real difference between being worth $700 million and $7.5 billion can be traced to an extremely lucrative deal with Universal theme parks. In the 1990s, Steven agreed to a deal that gave Universal the first right to make theme park rides based on his movies. In exchange, Steven would be entitled to 2% of all gross ticket sales at Universal theme parks around the world, annually and in perpetuity. Universal eventually opened multiple theme parks around the world. Each park owed 2% of its gross ticket sales to Mr. Spielberg. Steven owns $200 million worth of real estate and a $250 million yacht. Number 1. George Lucas. Net worth, $10 billion. George Lucas is the richest celebrity in the world with a net worth of $10 billion. George could buy the top 9 celebrities on this list outright and still have $400 million left over. George Lucas is unimaginably rich thanks almost entirely to Star Wars. As you may have noticed as you read this article, in order to become an unimaginably rich celebrity, it helps to own something that ends up being extremely valuable to someone else. In other words, you can't just be a highly paid salary earner. George Lucas owning 100% of Star Wars can be traced to what is by far the most brilliant business decision in Hollywood history. The long story short is that back in 1973, George agreed to accept a lower salary on the first Star Wars in exchange for 2 requests. Number 1, he would own all the merchandising rights. Number 2, he would own the full IP of the franchise after the first film. Between sequels, DVDs, and merchandise, Star Wars would eventually generated more than $12 billion globally. All profits went to George.